Thank you so much for watching the full view here on SABC News Channel 404. Now, today marks the 41st anniversary of the death of Black Consciousness Movement leader Stephen Bantu Biko. Now, the struggle hero died in 1977 of a severe head trauma on the stone floor of a prison cell in Pretoria at the hands of the apartheid forces.
We see a completely non-racial society. We don't believe, for instance, in the so-called guarantees for minority rights, because guaranteeing minority rights implies the recognition of portions of the community on a race basis. We believe that in our country there shall be no minority, there shall be no majority, there shall just be people. And those people will have the same status before the law, and they will have the same political rights before the law. So in a sense, it will be a completely non-racial egalitarian society.
But will the vast number of blacks, after all their experiences, be able to live their life without giving vent to feelings of revenge, of
Yes, we believe it is the duty of the vanguard political movement which brings about change to educate people's outlooks. I mean, in the same way that blacks have never lived in a socialist economic system, they've got to learn to live in one. In the same way that they've always lived in a racially divided society, they've got to learn to live in a non-racial society.
And we're joined now by social activist Sipho Malefane to discuss the legacy of Stephen Bantu Biko. Thanks so much for coming through, Sipho.
Thank you very much, Sakina, for inviting me.
I think, you know, one of the issues that we grapple with today is, of course, trying to locate black consciousness within our contemporary setup. And maybe we should start with, you know, what the main idea of black consciousness actually is.
Sakina, the main idea behind black consciousness is that Stephen Bantu Biko articulated the problem of South Africa for what it is, which is the thesis of white racism, and according to him, the antithesis would be black unity and solidarity, which ultimately would then usher a new non-racial democratic South Africa. What we have done, we have tried to usher in non-racialism through constitutionality. We have a new advanced constitution, a new dispensation. But the truth is, society is lagging behind. Whereas we have a beautiful document in the Constitution, we are grappling with the challenges of the legacy of colonialism and apartheid segregation. And black consciousness was about infusing a new thinking into the minds of the young black South Africans, that they should believe in themselves, that they should have pride in being black, that they should not be beaten about by a legacy of more than 400 years of inferiority that has been beaten into their minds.
So how would you say black consciousness resonates with the youth of today?
The youth of today are looking at heroes like Stephen Bantu Biko. They're looking at heroes like Frantz Fanon, that they say in Bantu Biko, a hero in that for the future, black children can look into themselves and say they are living with pride, that the non-racial democratic South Africa that we struggle for, they cannot see in terms of the South Africa of today.
But practically, how does that manifest? Because is this just about being able to quote, you know, I write what I like, or, you know, any other Fanon quotation, or what is it that young black people are doing practically today that shows that they have actually resonated with that message?
If you look at the South Africa today, look at the EFF. The EFF leadership in Julius Malema and the others within the EFF leadership have read Frantz Fanon. They have read Stephen Bantu Biko. They have looked at where we have come from in terms of the struggle, and they realize that indeed the black child is on his own. If we don't take the struggle into our hands, we will not achieve the non-racial democratic South Africa that we struggled for. A constitutional democracy will not necessarily usher freedom. We are still landless today. 2 decades into a new dispensation, we are still landless. We are still grappling with the issues of the economy. And it is through the writings of Biko and Frantz Fanon that the young people today have been inspired to take into their hands the struggle into the political economy, which is something that we had overlooked as we were struggling to usher in national liberation. And that is the biggest difference into the new South Africa that we want.
And I guess in saying that, you have kind of touched on some of the things you say in your writing about how some of the contradictions in post-liberation South Africa have actually proven what Biko had said back then absolutely correct. But the land question, for example, which is pivotal right now, how would you locate that within the black consciousness philosophy and explain that to young people today?
The land question is quite an important question in terms of the black consciousness philosophy, in that you cannot speak about black pride if you don't have land. You cannot speak about black pride if you don't have cattle. You cannot speak about black pride if you're not able to usher your own destiny in terms of self-determination through the economy. And it is for that reason that there is these contradictions where we're speaking about having achieved national liberation but still being landless 2 decades into the new dispensation. And it is for that reason that we see there is this disunity. Biko preached black solidarity, black unity, so that we can be able to fight white racism. So this is the biggest contribution that Biko made.
So just finally, in terms of preserving the legacy of Stephen Bantu Biko, are we doing a good job?
Well, certainly our quest to achieve an unracial society that we have not defined have seen us abandon the philosophy of black consciousness, and it is through the youth of today that we see a resuscitation in the movement of black consciousness. And it is through the writings of Fanon that the black youth are finding pride in themselves, and they're finding themselves again. And only when we find ourselves and we find the philosophy of Ubuntu can we actually achieve our humanity.
Well, thank you so much. That was Sipho Malefane, social activist, on the legacy of Stephen Bantu Biko.